You have seen this person. Something goes wrong suddenly, without warning. A car breaks down in the middle of nowhere. A situation at work collapses in real time. Someone gets hurt. The kind of moment where most people freeze, spiral, or immediately reach for their phone with shaking hands. And this person just goes quiet for a second. Not checked out. Not in denial. Just thinking. And then they start moving, calmly, deliberately. Like the emergency came with instructions only they can read. And you are standing there wondering what is actually wrong with you that your first instinct was to fall apart. So what separates these people? Because it is not experience. It is not that they have seen more disasters than everyone else. Some of them are young. Some of them have lived completely ordinary lives. And yet something inside them responds to chaos the way most people respond to a minor inconvenience. Once you understand what that something actually is, you will start seeing it everywhere. In the late 1970s, psychologist Albert Bandura identified a concept he called self-efficacy. Stripped of the academic language, it is simply your belief that you are capable of handling what is in front of you. Not general optimism. Not confidence as a personality trait. Something far more specific than either of those. It is the felt sense of, I have dealt with hard things before, and whatever this is, it is dealable. Bandura found that this belief alone dramatically changes how long someone persists at a problem before giving up. How much effort they bring when things get harder. Whether they treat difficulty as a signal to stop or a signal to adjust. And here is the part that matters most. Self-efficacy is not fixed. It is not something you are born with or without. It builds through experience. Specifically through what Bandura called mastery experiences. Moments where you faced something uncertain, tried anyway, and it worked. Not big heroic moments necessarily. Sometimes it is something tiny. You figured out why the thing stopped working. You made the difficult call. You stayed in the room when everything in you wanted to leave. And it worked out. That moment does something to your nervous system that has nothing to do with the specific situation. It updates a file somewhere deep in how you see yourself in relation to problems. And every time after that, when something breaks or collapses or catches fire, the brain does not go into shutdown. It goes into something closer to curiosity. I have solved things before. This is a thing. Let me look at it. But there is something else running underneath the surface that is just as important. Something that looks like confidence from the outside, but is actually a completely different thing. Psychologists call it tolerance of ambiguity. The ability to sit inside a situation where you do not yet know what is going to happen and not completely fall apart in the meantime. People who struggle with ambiguity need resolution fast. They need to know right now that everything is going to be okay. And when that reassurance is not available, which in a real crisis it almost never is, the anxiety floods in and takes over. They freeze. They spiral. They hand the situation to whoever seems calm and back away. The person who never panics has learned, somewhere along the way, to be okay in that uncomfortable in-between space. The uncertainty does not feel like a verdict to them. It feels like a starting point. They do not need to know the outcome before they begin. They are willing to move before the full picture is clear. That willingness, that specific tolerance for not knowing, is often the entire difference between the person who acts in a crisis and the person who watches someone else act. Now here's the part that is easy to miss. Because from the outside, this all looks like strength, but it does not always come from strength. Some people who never panic in a crisis learned that skill in the hardest possible way. They grew up in environments where staying calm was not optional, where falling apart had consequences, where being the one who kept it together was simply what survival required. Their nervous system did not develop tolerance for chaos because they were strong. It developed because chaos was the baseline, and adapting to it was the only available option. The tell is what happens when things are actually fine. When there is no emergency, no problem to solve, nothing broken that needs fixing. These people often cannot relax. Not properly. The calm feels unfamiliar, almost untrustworthy. They find themselves scanning for the next thing to go wrong, because some part of them learned that peace is just the gap between problems. That is not resilience. That is a coping mechanism so deeply practiced it started passing as a personality trait. Then there is the other kind, and this one is genuinely different. The person who stays calm in a crisis because broken things actually interest them. Because the gap between something not working and something working is, to them, one of the most engaging spaces in the world. These people ask questions that have no practical use. They explain what went wrong with a level of detail nobody asked for. They will take apart something they already fixed just to understand it better. They are not managing their anxiety in a crisis. They are genuinely curious about it. What they model, without intending to, is something quietly powerful. That not knowing how to handle something is a temporary condition. That problems are things you engage with, not things that happen to you. That broken is not permanent. Being around people like that recalibrates something. Because what they demonstrate is not that crises are easy. It is that a crisis is just a problem with higher stakes. And problems, by definition, are things that can be worked on. Here is what both types have in common, and what separates them from everyone else. They do not wait to feel ready before they act. Most people in a crisis spend the first critical moments waiting for the anxiety to pass before they do anything. They treat the feeling as a stop sign. They wait for certainty that is never going to arrive before they take the first step. The person who never panics has learned, either through deliberate experience or through necessity, that action does not require the absence of fear. You can feel the uncertainty completely and still move. And the moment you move, something shifts. The brain gets new information. The problem gets smaller, or at least clearer. The paralysis starts to break. It is not that these people feel nothing. They feel the same uncertainty you feel in the same situation. What is different is what they do with it. So if none of this sounds like you, if the calm, capable response to crisis feels genuinely foreign, that is not a fixed trait. It is a history. A set of experiences that taught you, reasonably and repeatedly, that hard situations are things that happen to you rather than things you can move through. And that can change. Not through deciding to be calmer, not through telling yourself to stop panicking, but through small, accumulated experiences of, I stayed in it, and I handled it. That is where it starts. Not in a dramatic moment of transformation. In something small, done without waiting to feel ready first.